And I had some success with that, but I saw in the newspaper a beekeeper in Cherry Hill was interviewed, and he was a new beekeeper, and he said that his cucumbers never did better than when he brought his hives to his backyard, because they're pollinated by honeybees, and there's not a lot of honeybees around otherwise. So I said, gee, I'd like better crops. And there was a course being offered, as it was noted in that article, by the state apiarist. He works for the Department of Agriculture. He's the bee inspector. And it was for beginners. So I emailed the article to my wife, and I said, I want to do this. And she said it was a great idea. So I took the course, and back then, you got a grant from the state when you took the class. So even though you had to pay for the class, you got money back. And I got a small hive and a smoker and a hive tool and some equipment and things like that. So it got me started. And I brought them into my backyard. And the first year I had one hive. The next year I split it, so I made 2 hives out of it. The next year I went to 4 hives, and it's just been growing ever since. So it was just that article I saw in the paper. It was about that it would help the environment. It was about that I had more time, and it was about that it would help my plants. And since then, I've given up my garden because I have so many hives now. I don't have time to tend my garden anymore. And my hives are all on farms now. They're not in my backyard anymore because I outgrew the backyard.
So going off that,
yes.
What are the benefits that bees give, not only like plants and crops, but
the major benefit is that bees will pollinate. They're responsible for pollinating 1/3 of the food we eat. So the fact that I've read is 1/3 of the mouthfuls of food that you eat is from bee pollination. So I'm not real good off the top of my head as far as the specific crops, but things like watermelon, things like berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, cranberries, but then it goes from there. Apples and oranges and things like that. But you think, well, I don't need 1/3 of my food isn't fruit, but it goes from there because there's certain grain that they also pollinate, like alfalfa. I believe it's alfalfa and clover, and the meat we eat is fed from those grains, from those grasses, or whatever they are. So it still affects that as well. It's not direct, but it's indirect. So our meat prices would go up if the bees were not doing their job. And why is pollination important? I don't know if you remember from I guess science class, but when sometimes a fruit will still be created if the flower wasn't properly pollinated, but that fruit will generally be misshapen and not as big and not as tasty. So if it's properly pollinated, you get more fruit, you get better size, better quality, better tasting. And again, that's why the bees are so important. Now, something that you may have heard about is the almond crops in California. Commercial beekeepers moved their hives. It would have been in, I believe it's February, moved their hives to the almonds in California. There's a region that has this Mediterranean type climate where almonds grow well, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I believe over 1 million acres of almonds, trees, groves, whatever. And they know that they need the bees to pollinate it. Otherwise, same thing. They won't get the nut as large, it won't be as tasty, and things like that. So they pay beekeepers to have their hives loaded on trucks. They pay truck drivers and pay for the diesel for it to move across the country, and people to unload it and put them in the field, so that 10 days that the almonds are in bloom, or however long it is, that there are enough bees there that they go from flower to flower and properly pollinate the almonds. Otherwise, they wouldn't get as good of a crop. And again, that's without the bees, they won't get as good of a crop. You have a bee right on your phone now. Look at your phone.
I know. I don't want to look at it. What do I do? What do I do?
Just hold still. It's